Crypto Cup updates, underwater chess, and why the London system is the best opening. All this and more today on ChessWire. Good morning and welcome to ChessWire. I'm your host, Adam Carter, with your morning news. Today is Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the chat. Also, if you are in the chess ecosystem, would like me to share an announcement, story, or do an interview on air, please feel free to reach me and DM me on Twitter at ChessWire. Please be sure to follow and subscribe. For every new 200 followers or new 20 subscriptions here on Twitch, I'll be doing a drawing for a $100 gift card to Amazon.com or a diamond membership to chess.com for the year, your choice. And now let's get to your headlines. ChessBase, Crypto Cup live. The FTX Crypto Cup kicked off on Monday with world champion Magnus Carlsen and new rival Alireza Fajora tapping a stellar lineup. The all-play-all tournament in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour's second major of the season is taking place on site at the Eden Rock Miami Beach in Miami, Florida from August 15th to the 21st. Follow the game's live expert commentary starting at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Round 2. Players go head-to-head in one 4-game match a day for 7 days, with the winner the player who accrues the most points and cash overall. Each match consists of 4 rapid games, with the winner earning $7,500, 3 points. If the match is tied, there is a blitz tiebreak with 2 blitz games followed, if needed by a single Armageddon game. The winner earns $5,000, 2 points, and the loser $2,500. For each game, the players have 15 minutes for all their moves, with 10-second increment after each move. For blitz games, it's 5-minute and 3-second increment, while for the Armageddon game, white has 5 minutes to black's 4, but a draw counts as a win for black. A won match is worth 3 points or 2 points if the match was won after a tiebreak. A lost match after a tiebreak is worth 1 point, but if you lose a match outright, you do not get any points. You can watch live commentary on chess24.com. Readers. A Battle of Minds and Lungs at the Dive Chess World Champion by David Painter and Violet Gonda. London, August 15th. Reuters. For a chess championship, the attire is a bit unusual. Everyone is wearing swim trunks and goggles, and chess clocks are replaced by how long you can hold your breath and at the Dive Chess World Championships in London. Dive chess is like normal chess but played underwater with magnetic pieces. Each player has to hold their breath while making their move. Once they come up for air, it's their opponent's turn. Over 4 hours on Sunday, 10 players dived and strategized at the Leonardo Royal Hotel pool. I thought it would be a breeze, but it definitely isn't, said player Zarin Dolab. Trying to see the pieces, keep yourself down there is a lot more difficult, especially if you are playing a long game. The winner was 33-year-old Michael Mazoretkiewicz from Poland, beating South African Ellen Decker in their final game. Speaking of skills needed, Mazoretkiewicz said, I think that 60% is chess and 40% is like other skills: swimming, keeping your body controlled, your pressure, and your breath. The unusual championship is the brainchild of American Eaton Elfeld, who wanted to incorporate a physical element to make the game even more challenging. Elfeld, who now lives in England, started playing chess when he was 4 years old and is a chess master. On to chess.com. World champions who gave up their crown, Nathaniel Green. Magnus Carlsen made waves with his recent decision not to play in the 2023 World Championship. However, he is hardly the first world champion to quit or criticize the championship system, or otherwise tire of the role or leave its acquisition to two new players. Some cases, like that of GM Bobby Fischer, are relatively famous. Others are less so. But who are these others who came before? And are their situations really anything like Carlsen's? That's the main question we'll be trying to answer, as it will place his momentous decision into historical context. Garry Kasparov, 1993, Anatoly Karpov, 99, Emanuel Lasker, 1921, Alexander Alkaline, 1946, Mikhail Botnovic, 1966, Bobby Fischer, 1977, Magnus Carlsen, 2023. Garry Kasparov, 1993. When he was still world champion, GM Garry Kasparov and GM Nigel Short, his next challenger after winning the regular FIDE candidates cycle, split from FIDE in 1993. Nearly 30 years later, Carlsen is now, like Kasparov, conceding FIDE's world championship. The similarity is almost in there. Kasparov valued being world champion more than Carlsen. He just didn't think he needed FIDE's approval in 1993. Kasparov's decision was counterproductive in hindsight, and he came to regret it. It led to a decade of confusion with two competing claimants to the throne. And unlike Kasparov, Carlsen has no intent to claim his own title, even though he probably could if he wanted. If Meltwater is any indication, sponsors would not be a problem, but he would probably have to find an organizing committee. Instead, however, Carlsen is content to remain the number one on the rating list for as long as he can. Kasparov was not content with that, and he was still number one by rating when he retired in 2005, a long 12 years after his decision to leave FIDE. That retirement came just weeks after Kasparov, who finally lost his title to GM Vladimir Kramnik in 2000, gave up on trying to regain an undisputed title on his own terms. While Magnus won't be creating a rival claim to the throne, in some ways he's being even more subversive, actively retaining a 50-plus point rating advantage on everyone else, possibly 100 points if he comes anywhere close to his 2,900 rating goal, while not bothering to have it solidified in the title is probably just about the most a single player could do to turn the world champion, into an empty formal designation. We will see if Carlsen's decision plays out any better or worse for chess as an institution than Kasparov's did. For now, we do know that Kasparov and Carlsen share a contempt for FIDE recognition of their status as the world's best player. Anatoly Karpov, 1999. The most recent occasion on the list is also one of the more obscure because it ushered in the era of lesser-known FIDE champions. Karpov, undisputed world champ from 1975 to 85, was by zero means lesser, but he was the first player to get the FIDE world champion title back after Kasparov left the organization in 1993. FIDE almost immediately started messing with the World Championship format. In 1996, Karpov was seeded into the semifinal of a 13-player match tournament and defeated GMs Boris Gelfand and Gadakamsky to keep his title. Karpov's 1998 defense was even less traditional. There was a year less to wait, and the candidates process involved a 97-player super knockout tournament, although Karpov was in the final this time. GM Viswanathan Anand won the knockout and then had to start playing Karpov less than a week later in a 6-game match. Karpov won in rapid tie breaks, one of his easiest championship paths. However, was going to have to succeed by his most difficult yet. The very next year, that super knockout tournament was to be the world championship itself, and Karpov was only to get a first round bye, like several other players of the time. Karpov didn't agree to being the first champion to have to defend his title this way, so he simply didn't play. GM Alexander Khalifman ultimately became FIDE's new world champion instead and was followed by Anand. GM Ruslan Ponomarev and GM Rustam Kazimjanov before FIDE ended the Super Knockout Championship format. It survives today as the World Cup. Unlike Carlsen or anyone else on the list, Karpov was not even getting the opportunity for a match. And so while he definitely declined to participate in a world championship, his circumstances were also unique. Emanuel Lasker, 1921. Emanuel Lasker was first champion to express disdain for the title and show in a public way that not everyone enjoys occupying the position. In theory, it was difficult for early champions to get too bored on the title. If they didn't feel like playing, they could simply wait until they did, an approach Lasker himself took. He played no matches from 1896 to 1907, and again from 1910 to the outbreak of World War I, during which there were more important things going on in Europe than chess. But placing the responsibility for negotiating the next match on the champion himself posed its own problems. Negotiations for the first world championship after the war between Lasker and Jose Capablanca grew as strained and bitter as store-brand plain Greek yogurt. It reached the point where Lasker announced he was resigning his title and giving it to Capablanca. He would still play the match just as the challenger. Nevertheless, he did, like Carlsen, want to give up the title. You can read about the Lasker-Capablanca match in our 100th anniversary piece last year. The short version is few, if any, people in chess media accepted Lasker's resignation, or at least the idea that he could just give up the title to Capablanca. Once the match began, Lasker didn't seem terribly worried, at least according to GM Asa Bernstein's recollection about winning, and so the validity of his claims ended up moot once Capablanca became champion. Even so, Lasker became the first player to at least try to resign the world champion title. As we know, he wasn't the last. Alexander Alkine, 1946. Alexander Alkine didn't exactly give up the title. He died while holding it. That makes it pretty hard to compare his situation to anyone else's, let alone Carlsen's. But the parallel is clear one way. Even though it was natural causes, or some ask, were they natural, that did him in, Alkine lost his title without playing a match. Excluding the 1993-2006 FIDE champions, the only players to do that are Alkine, Fischer, and Carlsen. Just as World War I wiped out a match between Lasker and Alkine Rubinstein, World War II prevented Alkine and Paul Kurz from playing for the title. This time, Capablanca's role as the post-war challenger was filled by Mikhail Botvinnik. But while trying to arrange a match with him, Alkine was gone less than a year after the war ended. Mikhail Botvinnik, 1966. Botvinnik doesn't quite belong on the list in that he did lose his title in a traditional match. Why is he listed then? Because he, like Carlsen, was unhappy with the World Championship process and thus simply stopped participating. Botvinnik actually lost 3 World Championship matches, the first 2 times in 1957 and 1960. The champion was guaranteed a rematch if he lost. In both 1958 and 1961, Botvinnik used that provision to successfully regain his title. After 1963, however, that clause went away. In protest, Botvinnik refused the ex-champion spot and in the next candidates. Instead of trying to get back to the World Championship in 1966, he was some kind of plebe. Most cases in this review can be summarized as someone else can have the title. Botvinnik was a case of someone else can keep the title. It definitely produces similar vibes, even if it makes Botvinnik not a perfect fit for this list. Bobby Fischer, 1975. The most famous case before Carlsen, even if Fischer's bizarre personality differentiates himself negatively from Carlsen's, is even keel. At the board, that is best seen in the fact that the 1972 World Championship featured Fischer's last competitive chess games for 20 years, whereas Carlsen has continued and will continue to play competitively. Surprisingly, That's pretty much the only other thing that differentiates these two cases. Otherwise, neither liked the specifics of the match format presented to them, and neither got them changed to something they would play, so neither played. In fact, it's unclear if anything could have ultimately convinced either Fischer or Carlsen to play once their would-be opponent was determined, except maybe in Carlsen's place, were he to play GM Alireza Fajora. In Fischer's case, he barely played for the title in the first place in 1972. It thus seems doubtful to many that he ever planned to play against someone he had never faced before, Karpov, in 1975. In the end, FIDE accepted all but one of Fischer's conditions. It wasn't even enough, and he quit. One other difference has not to do with the champions, but with who will replace them. Because of the different candidate cycles, Karpov already beaten the runner-up, GM Viktor Korchnoi, in a 24-game match and thus earned the title once Fischer forfeited. This time, the candidates was a round robin, and so there will be a match to replace Carlsen with GM Ian Neponamachi or GM Ding Liren. As stated, no one questions that Carlsen is a much better adjusted individual than Fischer was. Nevertheless, Fischer's decision is still the closest historical comparison to Carlsen's. Magnus Carlsen, 2023. There's not much to say about Carlsen in this article that hasn't been covered elsewhere, except to compare his situation to those of his predecessors. And, in fact, Carlsen's situation is unique after all. He's the only player in this article to meet all three of these simple criteria. Had title defense match on the table. This includes Alkine, Botvinnik, and on the match count, Karpov. Refused to play the match. This excludes Lasker and Kasparov. Continue to play tournaments, finally excluding Fischer. One last point on Carlsen. One career goal that he still has yet to achieve is winning the Chess World Cup. He's twice played it while world champion in 2017 and 2021. And there's no reason to think he won't play it again. The World Cup is, of course, a qualifying event for the candidates tournament. If Carlsen wins the 2023 World Cup, once again the world may have to wait and see, will Magnus play or stay home? Conclusion. So there you have it. Carlsen faced some circumstances and make some decisions that are, historically, quite unusual. However, Carlsen is not unique in giving up the crown or in getting tired of it. Even players we did not discuss, like Spassky in 1972 and Anand recently, have gone on record as being less than thrilled with everything that holding the title entails. This even though neither actually vacated and both played in multiple additional candidate cycles after losing the crown. But that last part only suggests that gaining the title is more fulfilling than keeping it. To that point, yes, a shortened cycle that doesn't guarantee a match for the reigning champion produces winners like Khalifman or Kazimzhinov. Great players, but not historically great. But the fans could still differentiate a one-time champion from a 6 or 8 or 10-timer, and if it makes the whole process less taxing on the title holder, maybe that is the price chess has to pay to keep its very brightest stars from burning out. Which champion do you think had views on the world champion do you think had views on the world championship most similar to Carlsen? Are there any episodes we missed? Will he ever try to become world champion again? Let us know your answers to these questions and more in the comments as well here at ChessWire. Articles from chess.com. Why the London is the best chess opening by Pedro Pinata. Nowadays, there are two things every new chess player learns fast. The first is how to move the pieces. The second is you must hate the London system. With millions of memes dissing the opening, the perfectly fine London fell into public disgrace. Play 2 bishop to f4 and you'll be instantly judged by everyone around you, including those who play the reversed London Slav defense as black. Meme all you want, but it's time you face the hard, cold truth. The London is the best opening in chess, and I dare you to prove me wrong. So much love, you have to hate it. Apparently, everybody loves the London, and that's why everybody hates it. Very paradoxical, so let me explain. London haters claim they can't hit play without being transported into the chess version of a toothpaste commercial. 9 out of 10 players use the London. This seems like a reasonable argument ever since world champion Magnus Carlsen popularized the opening. It looks like everyone wants to emulate him. And who can blame them? After all, who wouldn't want to play like the guy who beat none other than GM Ding Liren in 24 moves like it was nothing? It's games like this that make the opening so popular. Our London content is consistently the most visited on our openings page, and many beginners do choose to play it. It seems like the London is a lot like TikTok dances. Everybody disses it, it looks really embarrassing, but most people are willing to do it if it pays dividends. But is that really what's going on here? Is the London truly butchering the beauty and the plurality of chess? Let's look at the numbers. Every day, approximately 200,000 games start with this opening on chess.com. That really is a lot of games using the same opening. One tiny detail, though. That number represents roughly 2% of the games played on our servers. Do you know what this means? If you think too many people are playing bishop to f4, that's not math, it's trauma, and you should seek help. The most boring opening ever. Chess players are notoriously drawn to danger. It's not uncommon for top performers like GM Hikaru Nakamura to wrestle shirtless with lions, or for super grandmasters like Fabiano Caruana to play with knives while blindfolded. It's just part of every chess player's nature. Maybe that's why many of them yawn at the sight of bishop f4. There's simply no adrenaline involved in that move. I mean, how can anyone in their right mind compare it with the almighty 1e4 and the grueling tactical skirmishes that ensue after this opening move? I understand with the wonderful world of fighting chess, e4 can provide. Who wants to go through the slow and boring torture that is the London? What a snooze fest. Kamsky versus Shanklin. It's not for the cultured. London haters, what can I say? You clearly won this one. It's not for the cultured. Much of the hate against the London stems from the fact that it is not really an opening, but rather a system. You can play more or less the same setup against most of the things black throws at you. Because of this, Chess Elite started pointing fingers and claiming the London was bad for your chess development. I remember a few years ago when I started playing chess again after a long break. Like almost every beginner pre-chess boom, I would always play the respectable Italian game with white. One day I was talking about openings with my coworker and US chess expert Colin Stapczynski when he said I should give the London a try. Surprised and outraged, I exclaimed, "How dare thee? Is this not a game commencement for the uneducated and witless pedestrian?" or something like that. At that time, I was approaching a 1400 blitz rating, and I basically thought the London was just for noobs. Meanwhile, this is kind of a brilliancy I was producing. The London is clearly not worthy of such a magnificent player, right? It took some convincing, but I eventually embraced the London, and let me tell you, it did wonders for my chess. Obviously, I'm not saying it stopped me from blundering pieces and playing like a baboon years later, and I'm still doing it. My point is that maybe we should be a little more realistic about what a good opening is for most people. The majority of players on chess.com are rated between 600 and 1,000. As my game above clearly illustrates, even 1,400 struggle with simple things like, realizing the pieces are hanging. So we, mere mortals, are far more from the point where we need to understand the intricacies of positional battles in the Queen's Gambit or the Catalan. Honestly, if we can get to move 15 without dropping a piece, that's a huge win, and the London should help you with that. Prove me wrong, the London is the best opening ever. As you can see, if you're looking for something that isn't boring, the London is for you. If you're looking for something that will help you not gift your pieces to your opponents, at least in the opening, the London is for you. If you want to play something unique, do go with 1e4. No way. Jose Lopez hit them with the d4, bishop f4. And if that's not enough, here are a few other reasons to play this beauty. A player is judged by the company they keep. What do James Carlsen, Wesley So, Alexander Gershkik, Levon Aronian, Nakamura, Vadim Kramrik, and Nishgiri, and so on all have in common? Let me give you a hint. It starts with 1 d4 and it ends with 2 bishop f4. Almost no theory. As a casual player, you basically have two choices. You can adopt a time-old opening, study really hard, the millions of possible lines, variations, and ideas behind it, and still play them all terribly. Or you can choose the London, learn the basic ideas you should play against the few setups black can try against it, and mostly get decent games and have some fun. It's really just a matter of taste. Do you want to be a solid Samuel and play it safe? The London's got your back. Are you feeling adventurous and want to play a dubious sacrifice to shake things up? Get your cup of tea ready, my friend, for the London can also grant you that. And when your opponent is about to fall asleep while staring at your mighty pawn triangle, you can play the famous bishop takes h7 check to win a brilliant attack. It's double the fun. Winning with the London is a lot of fun, and when you're done playing, you can still enjoy memes about it. Win-win. There are 120 million possible positions just after 3 moves, and people still manage to play the London from chess.com. Conclusion. I just gave you irrefutable evidence that the London is the best chess opening in existence. Maybe one day, when we have flying cars and the technology to live on Mars, a supercomputer armed with an engine twice as strong as Stockfish will prove me wrong. But today, the London thrives. Now, obviously, I'm joking. There is no such thing as the best chess opening, although there is such a thing as the worst opening. I don't even play the London regularly anymore. But while poking fun at London players is a lot of fun, messing with the London haters is just as great. And on to questions, comments, and shout outs. This morning we have none of those. This is only our 5th stream, so we're growing. Please encourage you, if you're watching on YouTube, to follow me and subscribe on Twitch, or subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at ChessWire. This episode will be posted to YouTube later today, so you can subscribe there. Thank you for watching and listening to ChessWire. Have a good one.